Welcome to Family Law A to Z with DBD.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Family Law A to Z with DBD, a podcast from the Pennsylvania-based firm Dischell, Bartle, Dooley. This series reflects the collective experience of the firm's family law team, including attorneys Mark Dischell, Elizabeth Billies, and Katie Lynn Daly, who work closely together to provide clear, practical guidance on the legal issues that impact your family and your future. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about inherited assets and how they're treated in a Pennsylvania divorce. And joining me for this conversation is Elizabeth Liz Billies, a partner at Dischell Bartle Dooley. Liz practices all areas of family law and is known for her thoughtful, collaborative approach to divorce, custody, and support matters. She focuses on helping families navigate transitions efficiently while keeping long-term stability in mind. Liz, great to have you on the show. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Let's just get right into it. I would love to be inheriting some assets. I'm not, but
Who wouldn't, right?
please, Mom, Dad, what happened? But in Pennsylvania, because that's what we're talking about here, how are inherited assets generally treated in a PA divorce?
Sure. So it somewhat depends on when you receive the inherited asset. So let's just use a couple examples. Excuse me. So if I inherit an asset, let's say cash, it's usually cash, retirement, is what I see most of my cases. Once in a while, people will inherit real property. That can be kind of treated a little bit separately. Let's put it, as I like to say, we can put a pin in that one and talk about that specifically if we have some time. But if we talk about most of the time, you're seeing cash, proceeds from a life insurance, retirement assets that were not distributed during the
investment
life
stuff. I was going to say
those kinds of things. So we'll kind of talk about that. If I have inherited that money prior to my marriage, okay, it's going to be the increase in value from the date of marriage to the date of separation. It would be possibly the marital component to that inheritance if obviously there is an increase in value. There's no requirement in Pennsylvania to preserve an inheritance and not use it during the marriage. So you may not have an increase in value, right? You use your inheritance to go to Tahiti or, something, pay bills and do other things, but put your kids through college. But if you have an inheritance you receive prior to the marriage, it increases in value. We're going to look at date of marriage to date of separation. If there's an increase, that goes in the proverbial marital pot. Okay. If you have inherited money during the marriage from a third party, let's say, a long lost Aunt Julie dies during my marriage and I inherit money from Aunt Julie, it's going to be the increase in value from the date of the gift. So let's say I inherited that money last year, 2025. So it's going to be from when I received the money into the date of separation. That increase in value would also be marital.
Okay.
Another thing to discuss or just to think about with inheritance is a commonly asked question that I get is, well, my parents I've left me some money in their will, but they're still alive and kicking, which everybody loves, but so I don't have that money yet, but they've left me their money. Does that factor into anything? Is that an inheritance that's value today? And the answer is no. It's called an expectancy of an inheritance. And frankly, your parents could write you out of their will tomorrow and leave all their money to their dog. So until the money is actually received by the person, the clock does not start ticking on whether or not there's an increase in value that would be marital.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I thought, a moment ago when you're talking about the tragic death of rich Aunt Julie,
right,
who left me some money, and I'm already married. I was expecting that was going to be marital
Sure.
property in its entirety. Can an inheritance ever become marital property, or is it always just the delta of increase value?
Sure. So I have had a few cases where people have inherited money. It's usually through gifting, through lifetime gifting. I see this the most. So it's not the great Aunt Julie died and I'm in her will and being left money. Usually in those situations, it's just going to be one of the parties that's going to be in the will. They're not going to list the married couple that they're leaving their money to. That's very, very rare. What you can see oftentimes is lifetime gifting for estate planning purposes, and perhaps there is gifts to both of the parties, because there's a lot of money to give. And again, we're doing this more from a tax planning or an estate planning standpoint, rather than, someone has passed away. That's our focus, is this estate portion. Um, and then those cases, a gift to either a check written jointly to the married couple, most of the time that's going to be considered a joint gift.
Yeah.
Checks to each of the parties. Let's say, I'm married and my mom leaves money, writes a check to me and to my spouse. Well, that gift is going to be to my spouse. That could be, we're both getting a gift. And so do you treat it, most of the time it's a non-marital asset to both parties, it gets wiped out. So really
Okay.
the only time you're going to see it as a marital gift is if it's something jointly gifted to the parties. Probably that, again, once in a while you'll see a gift, jointly written check, wedding presents. If the divorce happens very shortly after the wedding, you might see that, but that's pretty rare. I will say the majority of the time what we're looking at for marital property is that increase in value of the original gift.
Okay. So if I feel like I'm trying to poke holes in your case. I don't mean it this way,
That's
right?
okay.
But let's say that for estate planning reason, my dad is sending me, $15,000 a
Sure.
year, and now I'm married, and I put that into a joint bank account. Does that now
Sure.
make that my money and is it marital property then?
It certainly could. And that's one of the biggest no-nos if you have with an inheritance. And we might talk about that later. But when you get an inherited gift, and I don't think people, you're married, you're happy, you're not thinking like a divorce lawyer. That's a good thing. Don't think like me, every day in your marriage. That's bad.
Unless you are married to a divorce lawyer, in which
exactly.
case
Then
they're
maybe you
gonna
should, right? But what happens, and that's very common, people get, especially if it's a smaller inheritance, I would say, and it's not an investment account, it's just a check. I get a check for $15,000, like you said, and we want to put in a, we want to go on a trip, or we need money just to pay bills. We got some credit card debt.
And then let's do that bathroom. Let's renovate that bathroom.
Exactly. And I see that, that's pretty normal. The issue that you're going to have is it's going to be difficult when money goes into a joint account and it has been spent. It is very difficult to get it carved back out at a divorce, because you have given it to the marriage. It's gone. You used it for a joint purpose, and likely that joint purpose is, there's nothing to show for it. So there's a difference when I use an inherited money to purchase real property, where I have the house still, right? And we can talk about that. But if I've just gotten a check from, great Aunt Julie for $10,000 and I put it into the joint account, and we take the family to Disney World, I'm not going to get that back in the divorce. It's gone. It's gone. And again, when I say don't think like a divorce lawyer, is that, and I tell clients where they say, oh yeah, that happened, or we redid the bathroom, like you said. And I said, listen, you used the money at the time for the thing that you wanted to use it for.
Right.
It didn't, it benefited your spouse, who now maybe you don't like so much, but it also benefited you and your family. It's not like, think about it in that way. It's not the end of the world. It didn't come back to you. It's not getting carved out, because usually, again, it's going to be a smaller amount of money. It's when the larger amounts, are when people are like, hey, how do I get that money back? And it's like, okay, well, do you still have it? Where is it? Did you spend it? And what do you have to show for what you spent it on? They're the kind of questions I'm going to be asking.
Well, I mean, right into that then, what if, it was a good chunk of cash, and, we're able to, use it to, to buy a home, or or real property, and, during the marriage. And then is that automatically like, well, that's marital property, it's a wash?
No. So it can somewhat depend on what county that you're in Pennsylvania. So I'm just going to go with the Philadelphia area, because that's where I am. I'm going to use it. The best way I can explain this is probably in an example. So let's say I have a client who inherits $200,000 from her father's estate. Her father has passed away. She receives $200,000 in cash, and her husband say, "We're going to buy a shore property. We've always loved the Jersey Shore. We want to own a home there, and we're going to take this $200,000 and we're going to deposit it, for a down payment for a shore property in Ocean City or Wildwood, in one of those fun places, and we title that house jointly, because that's what's going to matter kind of here." And so I have given my $200,000 inheritance, or my client has, to the marriage by titling it jointly when we purchase the home. Okay. And now let's say 5 years later, we're breaking up. And I'm like, "Oh, gee whiz, I don't want to split the equity in the home 50-50, or however it's supposed to be split, which would include my $200,000 gift.
Right.
That gift was from my family. I want it back." And so your question is, can I get it back? And the short answer is yes, some of it. When you have given non-marital property, which the core of an inheritance is, it's separate property. Non-marital property essentially means the same thing. And for every year you've given it to the marriage, 5% is taken off of what you get back. So it vanishes 5% per year until you've given it to the marriage for 20 years. And so if I've given $200,000 of non-marital money to the purchase of this home, and then 5 years later we break up, 5 times 5 is 25, I'm getting 75% back. So 75% back of $200,000.
Okay.
The idea behind this theory is that it wouldn't be fair for this other person to get a windfall, to get more money. They're essentially getting a portion of my non-marital property, and that's not fair, particularly when the gift to the marriage has not been for a long period of time. So that is how we treat it if it's used to purchase a jointly titled asset. If it was used to purchase the house, let's take my same example, and the house is not put in joint names, it's just separate property. Well, separate property is valued date of the purchase or the date of marriage to date of separation. What's the increase in value? So
it's like an investment situation there.
Exactly. It's that increase in value again, because it's always been just in my name or my client's name. So it really, the title is kind of what changes it or affects how we're going to value it, what math we're going to do. And the same as if you inherited the house just directly, which I have had people do, inherit a shore property, inherit a piece of a shore property. It's okay. What's the value when we inherited the house versus date of, and versus when it was given to the marriage as a gift? What's the value now? We're doing a lot of math.
Yeah.
It can be done. All is not lost. You're not out, but we got to do some math. And what really matters in these cases is documents. And again, don't think like a divorce lawyer, but that's where, it's the documents. What documents do I have to prove all of these time periods, prove these gifts? Do they exist? Do they not exist? And that's what I'm going to be asking my clients about.
Is there a way to keep an inheritance separate during a marriage? I mean, you mentioned the shore property and putting it in a specific person's name, which is, way to sort of manage that. Is there another sort of specific way to keep it separate?
Sure. So the number one way, if you do not want to share in the increase in value of an inheritance, is a prenuptial agreement. So most of the prenups that I write, I'm going to have language that says inherited property, including the increase in value, is non-marital. It's out of the proverbial pot. So that's the best way. So I would counsel a client, if you think you're going to be coming into a large amount of money from your parents, your grandparents, other extended family members, and you're not yet married, may not be listening to this podcast yet, I guess, but maybe you are, and you want to get a prenup, or maybe you're on your second marriage, let's get a prenup. That's the best way to keep all of it out, right? If you're currently married and you have you're about to get an inheritance, don't ever put it in joint names. Okay. If you use it to purchase joint something like my, example, my trip to Disney World, you're not going to get it back and be okay with that. get that okay in your brain already.
Right.
And then the other way would be, if you're going to use it to purchase any real property, make sure that you keep all of the documents to show what you were gifted. It got deposited into, the down payment for the residence, like where it came from. Just trace the dollars to get your money back. And that's those are the kind of the three ways, but the prenup is the number one way to keep all of it out, including the increase in value.
Got
for
it.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned documents. Are there specific, records or documents that someone should really make sure to retain for this kind of a situation?
Sure. The ones I like to see, which a lot of people don't have, unfortunately, is and may not be using the right term, and it may different estate lawyers may call it something different. It's the distribution list. It's who got what. Because there's siblings oftentimes, and like, let's say my client got the check and then distributed it to 5 people.
Oh yeah.
I need to show so the distribution list, it shows when the money was distributed. So we have a date, right? When the person died, and who was supposed to get what. Because sometimes the checks go, like I've had a couple cases where my client got the big check, but then they had to distribute the money to their siblings. So it's like, well, that's not really what I received. It's like, well, I need to know.
It looks like I got $1 million, but I only kept 250. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's going to be that is the most helpful to me. But a lot of people don't have that. If they were the executor of the estate, they may, or if it's not that long ago and they have the law firm that did did probate for them, they would be able to go back to them and get that information. The original, when the statements that help me the most are if it's a retirement account and it's rolled over from the deceased person into an account in my client's name, that original statement shows what the original gift is. So that's our starting number, right? And then we get a current statement. I know that increase in value. That's easy. Same with a bank statement. If money had to ever go through the joint account, but it was just sort of passed through, maybe to purchase the home, or just I didn't have a checking accounts or savings accounts set up to put my inheritance in yet, I would want to see all the steps along the way into that final account in your name alone to show it never sat in the joint. It was like in there for one day.
Got it.
So bank statements, investment account statements, that original gift statements, any letters that you have, enclosing checks, please find a check for X, Y, and Z for this purpose. Those are the kind of documents I'm looking for.
Okay. That's clear. Final question, just for this episode, because we're up against time. And, given your experience, right, in Pennsylvania and practicing as you do in family law, what do you find people most often misunderstand about inherited assets in a Pennsylvania divorce?
I think kind of what you said in the beginning of our conversation is like, well, if my husband or wife inherits the money during the marriage, then it's a marital asset, full stop, just like in any other bank account. And the answer is no. That's probably the number one thing. The other thing is people trying to claw back money that has been spent, like we've discussed before. And they're like, well, I want that money back now because they don't like this person anymore. Fair. Get it. But that's going to be difficult. So, but it really is like, well, people just assume because we say marital property is any asset owned or acquired during the marriage, like, well, the inheritance was too. And I was like, no, there is an exception in the code for that. And then I have to explain. Usually people are pretty good with understanding that, but that's probably the number one thing.
I got it. That's great. Thanks, Liz. We're up against time, but thanks for sharing your expertise. You made it super understandable, and
great.
I look forward to connecting on a future episode.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of Family Law A to Z with DBD. If you'd like to learn more about Liz Billies or the family law team at Dischell, Bartle, Dooley, visit their website, dbdlaw.com, for resources and information about Pennsylvania family law matters. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, subscribe, leave a review, maybe share this episode with someone in your world who is dealing with an inheritance, marital property issues. Who knows? Help them out. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.